Have you ever thought about the invisible math that keeps our financial world running? Well, today we are diving deep into that world. It's this quiet, constant battle against total uncertainty, and it's fought by the people who have to predict the completely unpredictable.
I mean, really think about that. What if you had to place a bet on the future? And we're not talking about a small wager. We're talking about a bet that holds the retirement savings of millions of people, or a bet on whether a city can rebuild after a natural disaster. This is the everyday reality for giant institutions like pension funds and insurance companies.
And the scale is just mind-boggling, trillions of dollars. And that money is constantly facing a barrage of threats. Some are the ones we all know about, like stock market crashes, but others are totally new. How do you even begin to price the risk of something like a future pandemic or a massive cyber attack?
So who on earth guides these massive organizations through such a minefield? Well, that's where the actuary comes in. They are the pros, the experts in putting a number on uncertainty. They help these companies walk that incredibly fine line between taking risks and going broke. And their whole process, it starts with imagination.
All right, so the whole journey kicks off with something that sounds simple, but is actually incredibly hard. You have to figure out all the possible dangers hiding in the shadows. Step one is literally just identifying everything that could go wrong.
Now, the official term for this is risk identification, but what it really boils down to is answering one single terrifying question: what could destroy us? And, a lot of experts will tell you this is the hardest part of the entire job. Why? Because the most dangerous threat is always the one you didn't see coming.
Okay, so to bring some order to all that chaos, actuaries start by sorting these threats into big buckets. First, you've got your financial risks. That's stuff like the market completely tanking. Then there's business risk, which is more about the company itself, like making bad calls on what insurance policies to sell. You've got operational risks. Think computer systems crashing or even fraud. And finally, the big one, external risks. These are the huge things like hurricanes or sudden changes in government rules.
And these things don't just stay as vague worries. They get written down, documented in what's called a risk register. This is so important because it forces you to get specific. A general fear like getting hacked becomes a concrete cyber risk with a very real potential impact, like massive reputational damage and millions in legal bills. You're basically giving the monster a name, and that is the first step to taming it.
So we've named the monsters. We've identified the threats. Now what? How in the world do you put a price tag on something that might never even happen? This next part is all about measurement, about trying to quantify the potential damage before it ever strikes.
And one of the first, most crucial distinctions they make is between two very different kinds of financial risk. You've got systematic risk. Think of a huge global recession. It's like a tidal wave that pulls everything down with it. You can't just shuffle your investments around to avoid it. But then you have diversifiable risk. This is the risk of one specific company failing. And this distinction, it's everything. It separates the unavoidable storms you just have to brace for from the specific threats you can actually plan around.
To measure this stuff, one of the most important tools in the toolkit is something called value at risk, or VAR for short. It's this one single number that's designed to answer a pretty scary question. Okay, in a really bad scenario, how much money could we possibly lose, and how sure are we about that number?
So what does a number like this, $4.5 million, actually mean? Well, let's say a company calculates its 95% one-year VAR is $4.5 million. That isn't just some number they pulled out of a hat. It's a really powerful statement. It's them saying, we are 95% confident that our losses will not be more than $4.5 million over the next year. It gives them a line in the sand, a worst-case scenario they can actually plan for.
Okay, so we've found the threats and we've measured them. Now it's time to fight back. This is where we get into the active strategies that companies use to actually tame the beast and protect themselves from the worst-case scenarios we just calculated.
And at a high level, there are really only 4 things you can do with any risk you've identified. 1, you can avoid it. Just say, nope, we're not getting into that business. 2, you can accept it. Basically, you shrug and say, we'll take our chances, but you keep enough cash on hand to cover the potential losses. 3, you can mitigate it. Take actions to make the risk less likely to happen or less painful if it does. Or 4, and this one is a huge deal, you can transfer it. You can make it someone else's problem.
But that leads to a really interesting question, right? What do you do when a risk is just too big? I'm talking about truly massive, catastrophic risks, like a once-in-a-century hurricane hitting a major city, that are just too enormous for any single company to handle alone.
What then?
Well, the answer is reinsurance, and it is the ultimate example of transferring risk. Put simply, reinsurance is insurance for insurance companies. That's it. A regular insurance company pays a fee, a premium, to an even bigger company, the reinsurer. In exchange, the reinsurer agrees to pay for a chunk of the losses if a major disaster happens. It's how the industry takes a single, impossibly huge risk and spreads it out so no one gets wiped out.
And they can structure these deals in a couple of main ways. With proportional reinsurance, the reinsurer takes a fixed slice of the whole pie. So they might get 25% of the premiums, and in return, they agree to pay 25% of any claims. But with non-proportional, it's more like a giant deductible. The first insurer handles all the claims up to, say, $100 million. The reinsurer only steps in to pay for the excess losses above that massive number.
So you might be thinking, okay, great. We've identified the risk, measured it, and dealt with it. We're done, right? Well, not quite. Maybe the single most important lesson here is that this job is never, ever finished. True risk management is a continuous loop.
You see, this whole process, it isn't a straight line with a finish line. It's a circle. You define a risk, you build a solution, you put it out into the world, but then, and this is the key part, you have to watch what actually happens. You monitor the experience, and everything you learn, the good and the bad, feeds right back to the beginning. The problem gets redefined, the solution gets tweaked, and the whole cycle starts over, getting stronger each time.
And why should you care about this? Because this constant vigilance, this never-ending cycle of analysis and learning and adjusting, this is what creates the stability in the pension plans, the insurance policies, and the banks that all of us rely on every single day. It's what keeps the whole system from collapsing. And here's the final twist, the really cool part. Good risk management isn't just about playing defense. It's not just about stopping bad things from happening. By understanding their risks better than anyone else, companies can do more than just avoid failure. They can put themselves in a position to take smart, calculated risks, the kinds of strategic bets that actually lead to huge breakthroughs and innovation. Which really just leaves us with one big question to chew on. The world is not standing still. We have these massive new risks on the horizon, from the rise of artificial intelligence to the accelerating pace of climate change. So the real question for all of us is, how is the cycle of risk management going to have to change and evolve to protect our financial future in a world that is only getting more uncertain?